Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we have hello. Say hello, money. Say hello, money, money. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. So we have pretty much, he's been very well behaved. For those of you guys listening on the podcast, he just woke up, so he's a little rowdy right now. But we had generally the same situation that we had over the last few weeks, where the same concern is for the supply chain crisis, and then in addition to that, the rising inflation. And both of those kind of things are really just what everybody has been worrying about for the last few weeks, right? Of the 41 S&P 500 companies reporting the quarter three results on Tuesday, 80% beat the earning expectations. This is probably the reason, for example, that they don't really want to change anything when it comes to the lockdowns and everything, because if they're making tons and tons and tons of money, what's the point of changing anything, right? Stocks in the U.S., mostly positive. The Dow hit a record high. In overseas market news, Istanbul was the biggest winner out of all the exchanges there in Europe, even though overall the market was mostly mixed. And then we have Africa and the Middle East being higher, Saudi Arabia taking the crown for the most positive there. And then in the far East, mostly mixed, although most of them were positive, with Hong Kong taking the biggest winner there at about 3.14%. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news, Bitcoin to the moon. New record high above 66,000, even though for the week it came back down. For the week it was down 1.06% at about 60,817. One of the major reasons why this has happened with Bitcoin is for two reasons. One is the approval of the ETF, which is an exchange-traded fund. I'm going to explain how it's not really a classic ETF. It's kind of like a double leveraged item that we're investing in when it comes to the Bitcoin ETF. But by approving the ETF, essentially now it's going to allow a lot more people to be able to invest in Bitcoin that normally wouldn't have been able to, or would have been difficult to do. For the most part, there's a situation where the majority of people in the world, let's say, still aren't really investing in Bitcoin. And now with the approval of the ETF and supposedly a second one on the way, there's a situation where now normal people like you and I that are investing in Tesla and Apple can just use our same stock account to be invested in the ETF. So it's going to open the market quite a bit to everybody. And on top of that, we also had a situation where George Soros, which is one of the richest men in the world and one of the most successful traders in the world, he has invested in Bitcoin. So obviously that is starting to bring more institutional money. More institutional money means a lot more demand, which means a lot more upside. So that's why we hit the record highs. Other than that, there was something really interesting that happened in the Binance US platform, which is different from the international one, for where in a minute it was slammed down the price of Bitcoin to 8,200, and then it recovered back up to over 60. I had a friend who told me about a person that he knew that had an order just sitting at 10,000, and when the market came down, it filled his order and came right back up, and he sold it, and he literally made $50,000 just like that. And other than that, there are some countries, or Binance, I should say, which is the largest exchange in the world, they are starting to block some accounts in Colombia due to the fact that there's some investigation in the Netherlands for, let's say, unscrupulous purposes. And other than that, we got Shiba Inu. Literally has gone up, 22%. So for those of you that didn't get on the Doge train, now you can get the Shiba shitcoin if you guys are interested in that. Other than that, we have a situation where Bitcoin for the year is up almost 110%. Commodities, crude is surging. It's the 9th positive week. This is intensified by the energy supply crunch. So this is part of the situation with the supply chains, right? We can't get products from A to B, and then due to the fact that we have I think they're doing it on purpose, in my opinion, but then we also have a situation where even in China and even in the US, for example, the winter is starting to come early and it's starting to be a lot colder than what would be expected. And so now we have a situation where the normal supply of the items are not there because we just can't get stuff where we need to. If you remember, a country like China, for example, still relies a lot on coal Okay, so if I remember correctly, I believe it's 47% of the production of energy in China is coal, but it's a huge percentage. And so if they can't get the coal to run their power plants, then they can't have electricity. And if you guys remember over, I think it was 2 weeks ago, in the recap that I did, I talked to you guys how China was forcing factories to close because of the energy crisis. So you can kind of see where all this is heading. We had a situation as well where Austria, the government of Austria and the government of Germany advised what their citizens should do if there is an apagón. I'm thinking in Spanish because I always do the videos in Spanish first. A blackout. I'm going to translate this from Spanish to English. It's funny because when I went back to the U.S. after being so much time in Latin America, I'm thinking in Spanish, and so I can't think of the English words. And so apagón in English is blackout. Yeah. So the governments of Austria and Germany are warning their citizens against what they should do in a blackout. I think this is coming. So if you guys are listening to me, especially if you guys were listening from the old channel, the Day Trading Academy channel that YouTube took down for no reason, you guys know that the majority of times the things that I talk to you guys about happen to happen. And so if you are listening to this, you should become a little bit of a prepper just in case there is a blackout, right? If the electric goes out or if they have to shut down, for example, a new power plant because they can't find the coal to be able to burn. The Tampa area, for example, you guys that are in the Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete, Brandon, that whole area where I grew up, they have a coal power plant there. So if they can't find the coal because of the supply chain issues, I'm not making this up, right? They literally are having problems finding the coal. And China is one of the biggest burners of coal in the world, then you're not, they're going to start to have shortages and blackouts. And so have some canned food. Every time you go to the store now, buy some canned tuna, buy a little extra toilet paper, just to have a little bit extra because I think this is coming and you don't want to be caught flat-footed if it actually does. Now, this is intensifying with the situation that the winter is coming a little bit earlier and a lot colder than normal. In China, Eastern China, it's 10 degrees colder than what the average. And so that means a lot more heat, a lot more electrical production, a lot more coal, a lot of other products they burn to be able to go ahead and heat homes. For example, Europe is having that crisis with the natural gas. Russia is not increasing the production to send over to Europe, so the prices are skyrocketing. So if there is no blackout, basically you're just not going to be able to afford to pay your electric. Just so you know what's going to happen. Other than that, U.S. crude is up for its 9th week in a row, 1.79% this week. International Brent is up 0.78%. Gold and silver prices are also going to the moon. If you guys remember 2 or 3 weeks ago, I told you guys when it went down to about 21, 22 silver, I told you guys this is a good moment to take a look at it. Obviously, I can't give you trading advice or accounting advice or legal advice because I'm not an accountant or a trading advisor, but take a look at it because very soon it's going to go parabolic, probably in the next few years. Gold went up 1.41% to 1,793, while silver went up 4.27% at $24.40. And a lot of you guys that are always ask me, for example, how I trade and things now. I do more long-term trading, mostly in the silver market and the silver miners. And I had a great trade. I shared something on the Spanish Instagram, but I'll share it with you guys here. It was, I made like 24 or 30,000 this week, which was great. So other than that, precious metals definitely up for the week. Financial and banking news, there's a huge slowdown in China's economy due to the fact that they're starting to crack down what it seems like on everything. This basic situation that we had with Evergrande, which a lot of analysts were talking about, was China's Lehman crisis moment. Lehman crisis being the 2008-2009 crisis. Well, 25% of the economy in China is literally the real estate market, right? And so keep in mind that we have a situation that if the second largest economy in the world, if 25% of the economy that they have goes down quite a bit, obviously it's going to reverberate throughout the entire economy as well. Real estate market in the U.S. is also slowing down, right? Zillow reported that they're not buying as many houses anymore because obviously there's not as many buyers. So, things are starting to show that the economy isn't doing as well now as it was before, or at least recovering as well as it was before. British inflation showed an unexpected rise in September. It went up by 3.1% on an annual basis in August instead of the 3.2. So I think I said that the opposite. So it slowed down unexpectedly. German producer prices went up 2.3% month over month. So this is important because obviously Germany, they manufacture quite a bit of things, especially cars, right? Mercedes-Benz, BMW. But if their prices are going up by 14% annually, which is much higher than what analysts expected, the price of shipping a container has gone up by 400, 500, 1,000%. Oil has gone up 40, 50, 60%. That's why we're seeing these huge increases in our prices. And it's part of the reason why I tell you guys maybe you should buy some food now, because you're going to save 20, 30% from a few months from now. Other than that, U.S. companies are on pace to spend more than $1 trillion in share buybacks in 2021 after Democratic lawmakers are talking about a 2% excise tax on the corporate share buyback. So basically the Democrats, what they want to do is impose an extra tax for companies that are buying their own shares back. Other than that as well, the U.S. Treasury Department on Friday said that the deficit in the United States went up to $2.8 trillion in fiscal year 2021, which is the second largest in history, only to be beaten by the year of COVID, which was 2020, which was $3.1 trillion. So even though the pandemic, I don't know if we say it's over. I guess it's not really over, right? But things are kind of getting back to normal because people are getting vaccinated and things. We still spend a ton of money in the United States, and this is obviously not going to end well. And that's part of the reason why I'm so bullish on things like gold and silver. Bitcoin as well, for example, is going to go up because it's an inflation hedge. But if the Australian and German governments, for example, are right about advising their citizens about some kind of blackout, obviously you're not going to be able to pay with Bitcoin if there's a blackout, right? But you'll be able to pay with silver because you bury it somewhere. You put it under your bed with your cash. Other than that, political news, Brazil's currency and stocks paired losses on Friday after there was rumors that the economic minister, Paulo Guedes, was going to resign, even though he said that he wasn't. Obviously, there's a situation in Brazil. And one of the things I really find fascinating is if you compare a country like Brazil to Canada, I don't know if they're relatively the same size because Canada is relatively larger, but obviously there's a huge portion of Canada that you can't really use because it's literally just under ice, right? But Brazil has about 230 million people, okay? Brazil has a smaller economy than Canada, which only has 40 million people. Now, both countries, including the United States, for example, they were all colonized by the Europeans. So what's the difference, for example, with Canada and Brazil? Well, Brazil is more of a socialist country, whereas Canada is more of a capitalist country, right? So that's basically the difference. And so the reason why they went down so much in Brazil being, the 12th or 13th largest economy in the world, is because obviously if this minister resigns, they're going to go back to that socialist frame of thinking, and things are not going to continue to go well in Brazil like they were not going well before. Other than that, the economic news, the International Monetary Fund is slashing its 2021 economic growth forecast for Asia. They're now expecting them to grow 6.5% instead of 7.6%. So now you can see, again, another piece of news that is saying, well, the economy is not doing as well as it used to be, right? Number of Americans filing for new claims for unemployment benefits dropped to a 19-month low last week, indicating a tightening labor market. However, we don't have a situation where we still have more employees or more people employed now than before COVID, meaning the amount of people that have jobs now is still less than what we had before COVID, which is actually something that's pretty interesting. And the U.S. Social Security Administration is releasing wage statistics for 2020. The median wage in the United States now is $34,612, meaning that 50% of the people in the United States are making $34,600 a month or less, right? Less than $3,000 a month before taxes. One poll saw that 59% make less than $50,000 a year, which if I'm not mistaken, that's about $4,100 a month. And essentially most Americans now are living paycheck to paycheck, and the middle class is disappearing. And this is very This is a very bad thing because the economic engine of the United States is the middle class, right? So we're moving in a direction where it's going to be kind of like a third world country where there's going to be the super rich and then the poor, and there's not going to be much in the middle. When more than 50% of the jobs in the United States used to come from the middle class, right? Small businesses, for example. And what happened during the COVID lockdown? Oh, you can't go to Joe's shop. No. But you can go to Walmart. Walmart can stay open, right? And this is why we kind of see the same line of thinking, let's say, for that's why they don't want to stop the pandemic, because obviously the rich people are getting richer and you and I are getting poorer, right? And other than that, in corporate news, Snapchat brought down major tech firms over the week after they literally just completely missed the analyst expectations of what the revenue was going to be for the third quarter. Snapchat warned that due to the supply chain interruptions and the labor shortages obviously come from the government, right? The huge deficit, second largest deficit in history for the United States, meaning that we're spending a lot more money than we have. That money eventually is going to have to be paid back. And this is the reason why we have the inflation, essentially, right? Because it's a hidden tax. So right now, the government is reporting that the inflation rate is about 5.2%. If prices have risen at the grocery store, it's probably really about 20 or 30%. In my humble opinion, it's above 30%. So if we have a record deficit, if we're borrowing money that we really can't pay back, but it's devaluating at 30% a year because of the inflation, then it's more reasonable to be able to pay that back with less dollars in the future. Because if every year the value of the dollar goes down by 20 or 30%, well, in 5 years, 7 years, basically the dollar's not going to be worth anything, right? And so that's a situation. The labor shortages obviously have to do with the government giving a lot more unemployment benefits, so people just don't want to work, right? And then on top of that, there's a situation where now, because of the expectations of what the economy is going to do, and because now companies are making less money because of the supply chain interruption, Snapchat said that a lot more people are not going to want to spend as much money on advertising anymore. So it brought down Google and Twitter and Facebook and absolutely everybody. Trade news, the trade ministers from the G7 wealthy nations reached an agreement on Friday in London to be able to agree to some principles for cross-border data usage and digital trade. This could open up hundreds of billions of dollars of commerce between super restrictive, data protection places like Europe and places that more open like the United States. And obviously they can start kind of doing more business. Technology, Samsung SDI is planning on opening up a battery factory in North America for the owner of the French automaker Peugeot, which is called Stellantis. So they're going to produce battery cells and modules there in North America, which probably means Mexico. And Digital World Acquisition Corp, which is planning on taking former President Trump's social media platform public, exploded the new meme stock for the week. If you guys remember what happened with GameStop and AMC, for example, last year as well, it skyrocketed 284% in a day. It ended up finishing the week at 800% higher than what it was before, because obviously it's a meme stock. Investment news, Southwest Airlines, it's scrapping its plan to put unvaccinated employees on unpaid leave. But there is a deadline approaching in December that Biden placed for all federal government workers and contractors, of which Southwest Airlines and American Airlines are federal contractors, which means that they're going to have to abide by the COVID-19 vaccination plan by December 8th. And PayPal went down almost 5% when they said that they're going to have a massive acquisition of Pinterest, which is the huge picture, photo, social media app, for $45 billion. An international event. I mentioned to you guys the situation in Eastern China, how it's getting a lot colder, a lot sooner in the season, down to 50 degrees Fahrenheit in recent days, which definitely isn't normal. That's most of Eastern China, parts of Inner Mongolia, which is just north of China, if you guys don't know, and also another place that I just can't pronounce. And there's a level 4 emergency response that was issued on Friday because of the cold wave. And in unusual facts this week, Elon Musk regains his title as the richest man in the world. This is due to the new stocks that he sold for SpaceX, his space company, in addition to the stock of Tesla skyrocketing. He's valued now at $240 billion, while Jeff Bezos, which also has a space company, is now the second richest man in the world at $196 billion. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, if you guys haven't seen this video, I'll try to find it and tell my team to put it in the recap. But there was somebody that asked Jeff Bezos, they said, don't you feel bad that you're so wealthy, that you have hundreds of billions of dollars and other people don't have anything? And he said,
it's an output measure. If you look at the financial success of Amazon and the stock, I own 16% of Amazon. Amazon's worth roughly $1 trillion. That means that what we have built over 20 years, we have built $840 billion of wealth for other people. And that's really from a financial point of view, that's what we've done. We've built $840 billion of wealth for other people.
And that's kind of the idea behind, the government doesn't create wealth, right? The government, what it does is it redistributes wealth in a not very efficient manner, because both you and I know the government is corrupt, and the bigger it is, the worse it is. Whereas capitalism, real free markets, because I don't think the United States is a true capitalistic market anymore, the capital goes where it's best treated. And that's why the United States has become one of the richest nations in the history of the world. Third richest man in the world, LVMH CEO, Louis Vuitton and he owns all the fancy brands. Bernard Arnault is worth $164 billion, Bill Gates $130 billion, and Warren Buffett is sitting at number 10 with $103 billion. And then another interesting thing that happened this week, Alec Baldwin, which accidentally shot somebody when he was handed a gun in a set to record a movie. Well, normally, if you guys seen the movies, right, the guns, they don't put real bullets in them. They put blanks. So when you shoot, it doesn't really shoot anything out, right? Well, somebody handed him a live gun, and he accidentally killed somebody and injured somebody else, which is a bit of a fiasco right now, if you ask me. And other than that, in the disasters this week, we had a huge, one of the 5 biggest volcanoes in the world in Japan, absolutely explode quite a bit. La Palma, which is the volcano in the Canary Islands that some people say can cause a huge tsunami on the eastern seaboard of the United States, that is continuing to get stronger. The earthquakes now are at 5.0, which is the strongest that has been there, and there's more and more lava coming out there. There's a huge polar vortex. It's going to hit the northwest in Canada. It's going to drop 8 feet of snow and 48 feet of waves in the ocean. And in addition to that, there was something else that was really freaky, where when Mount Aso, the Japanese volcano, exploded, there were ships from World War II that were sunken underneath the water and also the earth. And when the volcano exploded, it actually rose the earth, and all of these ships that were buried before now are all above water, and you can see them. It looks really freaky. It looks like a graveyard. But that's the news for this week, guys. If you guys have any questions, don't forget to subscribe. Leave all your questions with the hashtag AskMarcello, and we'll see you next week. Bye.